Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to App Growth Trend and Strategies webinar organized by Asodesk. My name is Alex, and I'm thrilled to have you all here today to learn from top industry experts about the latest trends, strategies, and insights from app growth. Whether you are a developer, marketer, or entrepreneur, this webinar will provide you with available information and guidance to help you to grow your app and achieve your goals. By the way, if there are some of developers here, please drop one to the chat, which is from the left side of your main screen. If you're a marketer, you can drop number 2 to the chat again. And if you're an entrepreneur, please drop digit 3 to the chat. So over the next hour and a half, you'll learn about creating an effective Facebook strategy, understanding the main app marketing trends, maximizing app subscriptions and acquiring more users, increasing user retention, and understand the channels for growth. So our experts are passionate about sharing their knowledges and experience for you today. So they'll be able to answer any questions you may have. So please don't hesitate to ask and engage in the discussion. We will address them at the end of the webinar, as well as our special offer exclusively for webinar attendees. So I hope that you'll leave this webinar feeling inspired, motivated, and with a clear understanding of what it takes to grow your app in 2023. So sit back, relax, and get ready to get insights, because believe me, I've seen the speaker's slides on the dry run. It's a jaw dropper. Once again, welcome, and I hope you'll enjoy the webinar. Yep, great. Yours to comment moderator of this webinar is here. My name is Alex. I'm in charge of business development here at Asodesk. Fun fact from my biography, I've started my career back in 2012 in business development as a Nestle employee, promoting Movenpick ice cream. So ice cream and Swiss lovers, please put your pluses or any reactions in chat to let me see you. By the way, any reactions while this webinar are welcome, because the more interactive it will be, the better. And a couple of words about what we do here in Asodesk. Asodesk is more than just an ASA platform, because besides the best on the market ASA toolkit, we have a review management platform, different comprehensive reports to understand the market and your competitors and so on. So we've been nominated as a finalist in App Growth Awards in the best ASA tool category. You can find famous logos in our brand cloud, as well as a high rating on G2. So I would recommend you to try out our platform within a free trial. But first things first, and let me introduce the agenda of this webinar. I'm very excited to introduce it. So our goal is to provide valuable insights and information on actionable app growth strategies for this year. Today we'll uncover all about effective ASA strategies, user acquisition via paid channels, retention, boost strategies, and growth trends. So please feel free to write your questions in the chat. We'll be up for the most interesting ones, and our experts will answer them at the end of the webinar. So there is a reason to stay until the end, definitely, and we will line up of experts, speakers sharing their knowledges and experiences on this subject. And let me introduce you our speakers. Here they are. So I would like to say a couple of words about them. Ryan Kelley, who is a mobile growth consultant. Lorenzo Rossi, founder of REPLUG app marketing consulting agency. Alice Muir, growth consultant and retention lead from Phiture. And Thomas Petit, independent mobile growth consultant. So let's jump directly to the first topic of our webinar. And now I want to turn the floor over to our first speaker, Ryan Kelley, and his topic about effective ASA strategy for 2023. Ryan, how are you? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. And thank you for the introduction.
Awesome. Ryan, the stage is yours. Please tell us a couple of words about yourself and go forth.
Okay, so I've been involved in ASO for over 10 years. I'm very passionate about it. I enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to giving you some of my top strategies and top tips during this brief presentation today. So keyword optimization is tough. App Store optimization is even getting more difficult than it was before. Back in the early days of the store, there was this saying, there's an app for that. And you could go to the store and you could casually browse around the charts and you could find something that you didn't even know that you really wanted. You could download, you could surface apps. It was very easy. And it was very exciting, and everyone was downloading apps. But things now in 2023 are very different. User behavior has changed quite a bit. The way that people search, really, it's brand search rules it all. Most search is branded. But not all search is branded. Competition is just fierce. So there's more competitors competing for an ever smaller pool of keywords. Also, the techniques that we use for App Store optimization, there's not a lot, or there hasn't been a lot of innovation. It can become very difficult to try and experiment with App Store optimization, especially if you're at a company where you don't want to have an experiment that goes awry. And also, it's become very difficult with keyword optimization because there's still a lot of folks who are gaming the system and gaming the rankings. But I have 3 tips for you today that you could implement pretty easily and almost immediately, and hopefully that will help you out. And then I have one bonus at the end, which is not really a tip, but it's more of something to think about and to hopefully go back to your company and share with everyone. But I do believe it's probably the single best strategy for successful App Store optimization. So just a little thing too. I'm also, before I start and give the tips, I'm primarily speaking to scale ups and more enterprise. Whenever we're talking about ASO for newer apps or for smaller apps, independent apps, there's a few different strategies. Oftentimes, unfortunately, like you really have to, it just takes time. And once you get going, but I'll try and also talk a little bit about indie developers in case there are some smaller developers or smaller companies here on the call. So tip number 1 is the title. And the title is absolutely the most important part of your metadata because it has the most weight. And therefore, that means that you must use your primary keyword in the title, and preferably at the beginning. So in this example, I know it's a little bit hard to see, but Tinder and Bumble both are using dating, so that when somebody goes to the store and searches dating app, dating is they're going to populate one in the Apple search ad, but one in the first organic result. And they're doing better with their rank because the primary keyword is located as close to the beginning of the title as possible. One strategy, if you can do it, a lot of brands can't, but it's actually putting the keyword before the brand name. That's something that can help, and that's something that a smaller developer could do. But keep in mind that if you are a smaller developer, you're going to want to go for a lot of the keywords maybe that others aren't necessarily going for. You really have to dig inside the mine sometimes to find those golden keywords, but they do exist, but just don't expect to compete if you have a dating app with the likes of Tinder and Bumble and others. The other part about the title is keep it clean. I see a lot of people who are still trying to cram as many keywords as possible into 30 characters. I mean, back in the day, there used to be 255 characters, and that led to some really interesting titles. But if it's cut down to 50, then it's cut down to 30. And now it doesn't make any sense to add more keywords because it's just going to lower the weight and divide the weight between the keywords. So it's better to keep fewer keywords in the title and to some degree in the subtitle, which brings us on to tip number 2. So tip number 2, the subtitle or the short description in the Google Play Store, the short description, is the second most important because it has the second most weight. And there's two things that you can do here, and you have to decide this by testing and really figuring it out. More and more companies are using the subtitle as kind of a marketing hook. So to say, a discount or a special or some kind of offer, and then matching what's in the subtitle to what's in the first screenshot, repeating it in the first screenshot. So here's an example. This is a screenshot that I have that from an app called Swag Bucks, and they have share opinions, get paid, even though their title is truncated, which is another thing to keep in mind. Then they've repeated it, not word for word, but they're saying get free gift cards and cash in the first screenshot. So that's a strategy that's very easy to implement, and it works very well. So you're really showing people two places where they're hopefully reading that and more likely to convert. If you're a smaller developer, this is a good place to use some of the secondary keywords that you have. So you're probably going to want to use more keywords because you're going to really need to rank for more search terms versus a brand. When you have a brand, most of their search traffic and most downloads are going to come from branded searches, so they can afford to use the subtitle for conversion. And so the only other thing that I'll say about the subtitle and the short description is making more frequent updates is really important. Now, I wouldn't change the title any sooner than probably once per quarter, if even that. But the subtitle is really a good place to test, and it's also a good place to try a few different things. Try out whether it's more important for you to use keywords or whether it's more important to use some kind of marketing hook so that you can try and hook more users or convert more users. Tip number 3 is use keyword phrases. And more, I have been looking to SEO, and I've been looking to specifically what kinds of searches are people doing for apps on the web. And it's incredible, the amount of traffic and also the learnings that you can get from that. Believe it or not, like some of the biggest searches for apps are best app for XYZ, or comparing even apps, Tinder versus Bumble. And there is much, much more traffic on the web for discovery than there is inside the stores. And so what that means is you can take the data from web search and use it to test inside of an ASO tool to see if it has the same or similar kind of volume. Because what we're doing with keywords is we're not trying to find individual keywords. We're trying to find the keywords that are relevant, but that also form the most number of phrases, because the more phrases, the more potential, the larger the footprint and the more potential for downloads. Also, what's important is to support the keywords in the description. And I know people are saying, yeah, but the description is not indexed. It's not externally indexed in the App Store, but it's definitely internally indexed by Apple, which means that the more you can support your keywords, the more relevancy Apple is going to give to the keywords that you're bidding on, for instance, in Apple search ads. And Google, it's important to use the keywords. And I don't mean repeat 5 keywords 5 times or just spam keywords and by repeating them over and over again. I mean, use your keyword phrases in different phrases, or your seed keyword in different phrases. Use it in different tense, use plural, use singular, just so that Google understands that this phrase or this seed keyword is relevant to your app. And now for the bonus. And I think this is difficult to do. It's easy to say, hey, just do this, but I know how difficult it is, especially the larger the company, the more difficult it is. But keyword placement is only about half of the battle. The other half of the battle is volume of ratings and volume of downloads. And these are two things that are out of the control of ASO. And that means that we have to work with other teams in order for ASO to be successful. And that means working with your paid, owned, and earned media teams to build consistency between the screenshots, say, and the campaigns that are going on outside the store, or the website and the app page. There has to be this consistency, but I think more than that, there has to be some way for users to come into the top of the funnel. And because otherwise, if you just do ASO and you sit back and you wait for people to come to the store and to come to visit your app page, then you're leaving a lot on the table. These days, you have to go out and you have to get in front of people and you have to show them your app. There's a much, much bigger audience on outside of the stores than there is inside the store. The other part of that is reviews. Now, every successful app should have, or probably does have, some kind of strategy of where they're going to show the review prompts. And the UX team and the product team should be working very hard on figuring out where is the optimal place to show the review prompts. But if you have awesome ASO and you have good downloads or decent downloads, but you're not getting in any ratings, then you're still never going to be found in the search results, because you've got to have the same volume. So the other two parts are the customer success team. You should be responding to all reviews, positive and negative. Any negative reviews, that should be passed over to the product team. But also, it's important to look at those reviews and understand the types of language and how users are talking about the app, and also what features are most important to users, because that can inform you on potential keywords, but also which device UI screens and the device frames you should show for your screenshots. And then the last is just the data team. It's important to understand not just like what happens, yay, we got a download, but what happens after that? Like, what is retention like? What are the other events, down funnel events that are happening that really can help you understand how effective your ASO strategy is. So I think just in closing, successful keyword optimization, it relies on a lot. You have to have the right tools, you have to have experience, most definitely, and you need the support of the entire company and even other teams, as we've just talked about. But things that you can implement right away: the title has the most weight, so use your most important keyword in the title, preferably as close to the beginning of the title as possible. Subtitle, test out conversion. See if running a promotion or an offer or highlighting an outstanding feature in the subtitle and then repeating that in the first screenshot, see if that helps you. And then search phrases. So you really need to optimize your metadata for humans and for bots. And remember that when you update your subtitle, you're triggering a recrawl of the entire app. And this is good because this is kind of a freshness thing with Apple and Google, and they understand that, or they think that you're making updates and that you're keeping the app up to date. So that's something that can be done, can be repeated, just updating your subtitle more often. And then, of course, just leverage the whole team, because you've got to have rating and download volume at the end of the day. And that's it. So I left information here. Please feel free to reach out at any time. I'm always happy to help people out if they have questions on ASO in any way I can.
Yep. Thanks, Ryan, for the presentation. It was really insightful, I should say. These 3 tips was really insightful I would say that genius is simplicity. So I would like to focus towards our attendees. Please drop your questions to the chat. We will answer them at the end of the webinar. Don't forget to specify the speaker you would like to get the answer from. Thanks a lot, Ryan, and it's time to introduce next speaker. Please salute to Lorenzo Rossi and his topic, which is about how to acquire more users via paid channels in 2023. Hi, Lorenzo.
Alex, thanks for the intro.
Yep, I hope you have had a great week so far. The stage is yours, Lorenzo. Please say a few words about yourself.
Thank you
go
very
ahead.
much. Thanks. Couple of words about myself. I've been in the mobile industry for a while as well as Ryan, Thomas, and all the other speakers. I've been promoting quite some nice apps in the past. I was working for Zalando, Lovoo, Free2Move. And since 2020, I co-founded together with my business partner, Luca, REPLUG, which is a marketing agency. Today, we will talk about paid UA, as Alex was suggesting. We talk about how to scale in 2023. I think this slide is not needed anymore. I've already introduced myself. But before to start and talking about paid UA, a couple of words about REPLUG. We are an app marketing agency. We are supporting mobile first and not mobile first companies in basically all the app marketing activities. And we are involved in organic app store optimization, performance marketing, but also CRM and general growth consulting. We are quite young. We have been around for almost 3 years now, but we have done some nice projects and also got some nice rewards. Enough with self-promotion. As I was saying, a couple of words today. We are here to talk about paid UA, and in this specific, I wanted to start this presentation saying that paid UA has become a real mess. I think that if you are in the business of mobile marketing, you have this feeling like this astronaut to put your hands in your hair and say, this is a mess, because many things happen in the past few years. Already, Ryan was suggesting that we have a fierce competition, that user behavior has changed due to the pandemic and many companies moving online. And of course, I don't want to talk today about iOS 14, but we know that we have had problems in tracking during the past months, limitations in collecting data. So all of this, of course, is creating a spending inefficiency. And the question that we ask ourselves is the end of paid UA? Is there some possibility to survive? Well, my answer usually, if you behave like this dude here, drinking your coffee and saying that this is fine, everything is fine, while the mobile marketing world is going up in flame, probably yes, that's the end of paid UA. If you think that you can still run performance marketing and paid UA as you used to do in 2019, 2018, probably it's going to be difficult to succeed. So again, what should we do? We have tried to come to a conclusion to what should we do, and we concluded that there is not secret formula. There is not a magic potion that we can use and put in our Facebook campaigns and get results. But we believe that the best way, or at least the closest way to success, is to start rethinking the whole process and start thinking a bit holistic. What does it mean? It means that there is not paid UA anymore. You cannot rely only on performance marketing and paid user acquisition, but you need to think about app growth in general and think about all the activities that are around paid UA that can support paid UA. And to do so, we have come up with a 5-step process that we like to call process work, because it's not a process, it's not a framework, it's a combination. So we put together 5 phases, and for all of these phases, we identified specific activities that we need to do to try and reach the success of paid UA, to scale paid UA in 2023. This is the full crosswalk that we created. Of course, now looks very complicated because you see a lot of text, a lot of activities. Don't focus on what's written now in the single boxes, focus on the structure. As you can see, there are 5 consecutive stages, phases, and for each of them, there are questions that you need to ask yourself at the beginning. And then there are some activities that are grouped in macro activities. You see that the first phase is the audit and setup. Then you have the strategy phase, the implementation phase. The phase number 4 is analysis, and the 5th is optimization and test. Number 3, 4, and 5. When you arrive at number 5, you have a loop, which we call optimization loop, and it's the thing that will make the difference. We will see now in the next slide. I will guide you through each single phase, and I will show you also some example. I really tell you, to show the example, I would need a couple of days, so I try to squeeze everything in 20 minutes. At the end, you will receive the presentation, and also there is a link to a full article where you can read how to apply this process. Let's start with, wait, it doesn't work. Let's start with phase number 1. As I was mentioning, this is the phase of audit and setup. The question that you need to ask yourself in this phase is, what are the past activities and what type of messages have been used? And most important, the second question is the tech infrastructure ready to measure success? So why it's important, this phase? This phase is important because whenever you start from scratch, whenever you take over some activities from an ex-colleague, the first thing that you need to do is to stop and check what has been done in the past, to see if everything is ready to scale, everything is ready to spend. In fact, you see that the activities are divided in 3 macro areas. The first one is related to tech health check. Basically, here we go and check if the tracking, the MMP, is correctly set up, if you are ready to measure success. The second group of activities is around the campaign health check. So you want to see what has been done in the past, what kind of messages, what kind of targeting, what kind of channels. And in the third group of activities, you have everything that is related to the creative part. You want to see what type of creatives were used, what type of content, what type of format, because it's very important. And usually only when the audit is completed, only when you have a clear idea of the status quo, we suggest you to go to the next phase. And with a clear picture in mind of the status quo, you can actually start doing a strategy. What is the question that you need to ask yourself in the strategy phase? You need to ask yourself, what is the target audience and what is the best channel, the best way to reach this target audience, right? So also at this stage, you need to define the creative strategy. According to the target audience, according to the channels that you want to use, you will need to create a precise creative strategy. Why this phase is important? This phase is important because sometimes when we need to start campaigns for a new app, we are so excited that we just start without thinking very well about the target audience, without thinking about the peculiarity of the channel. So we just start with what we have, and usually this tactic is leading to failure. In terms of activities, you see that there are 2 groups of activities. In the first group, you have the campaign strategy, where you define all the things related to channels, all the things related to the targeting that you want to start from. Remember, this is just the start, so you need to start from somewhere. You cannot start with 10 channels altogether. And the second group of activity instead is related to the creative part. And here again, according to the target audience, you will have to define what type of creatives, how many creatives, because it's important according to the budgeting, how much creative, how many formats you need whatsoever. So audit, we check what's the status quo. Strategy, we prepare the strategy. And of course, when this part is done, we can go to the third phase, which is the implementation phase. And here, again, we put it separately because also the implementation phase is something that we need to take care of. Why? Because what we realize is that sometimes the implementation of the campaign is, I don't want to use the word sloppy, but it's really sloppy, because we realize that the naming structure is not correct. We realize that the exclusions are not very well done. So in terms of activities here, you really need to build your campaigns very well. You need to prepare a testing structure for the future, because even if you start with $1,000 budget, you want to think big. You want to think about scaling. So you need to think about the scaling structure. And also very important, you need to start thinking about the reporting that you want to create at this stage. In terms of creative production, here you will have to start creating the briefs for the graphic designer. If they are internal or external, you will need precise briefs, and not only for the graphic designer, but also for the content creators, if you will run with user-generated content. And again, once the implementation is done, that's the fun part, because you will start getting the first result, you will start getting the first events, the first users, and you can go to the next stage, which is the part where you analyze what are the questions that you need to ask yourself. Of course, what are the main results? What are the first results of the first dollars that you spent? And what are the main drivers for those results? You want to know what is driving these results. Of course, you can check also, you need to check also the creative performance. In fact, like, the activities are divided in two groups. The first is the campaign analysis, the second is the creative analysis. Of course, there are many things to analyze. Now, we don't go through everything, but the main concept is that you really want to know what is working. You really want to know what is not working, because from this first analysis, you will then go to the phase number 5, where you can start optimizing and testing. And here, the question that you need to ask yourself is basically one: how do I get better results? How do I get better results in terms of channels to test? You will see in the first group of campaigns, optimization. In terms of activities, you will have channels to test, you will have new audiences, new optimization ways, but also in terms of creatives, what new messages, what new formats whatsoever. And here we added the third group of activities, which is across area optimization, and in our opinion is the most important part, because also Ryan was mentioning before, we need to think beyond ASO, and in my case I'm saying we need to think beyond paid UA, because there are a lot of activities that can be optimized and can benefit paid UA as well. I'm thinking about ASO. First of all, ASO is the landing page for your paid activities. The App Store page is the landing page, so it needs to be optimized for conversion. But also, nowadays, everyone is talking about CPP, custom product pages. Who is the responsible for custom product pages? Paid UA team, ASO team, it doesn't really matter as long as it's done in a way that is benefiting the paid UA activities. Other cross area that can be optimized are the CRM campaigns. If we see that we acquire users, but those users are not engaged, it could be a problem. And also all the part of the onboarding process. We will see later some optimization that can be done with the onboarding that can benefit your paid UA campaign. So this all in all is our paid UA process work. And you see that once you start with the phase number 3, the optimization loop started, because once you start with the campaigns, you get the data, you start optimizing, and then you implement again, and then you analyze, and then you implement again. So this is a loop that should never end. There is never enough optimization in our opinion. Again, it looks complicated. We believe it's not, because it's just a matter of following this structure. We have collected some example now, and we will show how does it work phase by phase. I start, of course, with the audit phase. Again, here the questions were around what past activities have been running, messages that were used, but also the tech infrastructure. And what are the most common findings that we have during the audit? In terms of tech health check, we really see very often that the MMP is not ready for tracking, especially now with iOS 14. It happens so many times that the scan is not properly set up, so you cannot really track your installs, your events. The conversion window is often wrong, and sometimes we see that some crucial events are not tracked. For example, some important events that you need for defining your success. We see wrong attribution windows. We see, for example, Google Ads that is optimized with Firebase events instead of with the MMP. So here you go through your tracking settings, and you often discover that there are things to be improved. There are things that are not perfect. In terms of campaign health check, what we see is that not always the paid UA strategy is advanced. We see often a basic paid UA strategy, so only based in 2 channels, most likely Facebook and Google. We see, for example, Apple Search Ads accounts that are basic instead of advanced. We see that the Apple Search Ads campaigns are based on broad targeting, broad keyword targeting. So all these kind of things that, again, can be improved and can bring more results, because remember, when you have a limited budget, like even the minimum optimization can make the difference. In terms of creative health check, like in an audit, we often see that we don't exploit all the opportunities, because in terms of creatives, nowadays we have banners, we have normal videos, we have animations, we have slideshow, we have user-generated content, normal influence, and sometimes we just limit ourselves to a banner, often with too much text and probably not really clear. We will see some example very soon. Here, I also added some cross-activity check, and it's related to the App Store page. As I was mentioning, if you need to run paid UA campaign, but you see that the App Store page is very bad, you don't want to start your campaign. You want to suggest to change it, because otherwise the conversion rate, the efficiency of your budget spending will be lower. The same for the onboarding and retention strategy already mentioned. Like all those things should be checked before to start running campaigns. We see, I will show you now, like how do you check during the audit the funnel conversion? Why this is important? Because if you map all the events to the conversion, for example, here the conversion that you're interested in is the profile completed, you are able to see where there are the blockers. So if the install to registration is good, but the registration start to registration completed is like 5%, you might have a problem with this kind of step. So you want to know everything. You want to know where are the problems, even if they are product related. This is another example of tracking audit. So how do you see if some events are not tracked, some important events? You can map all the touch points that the user has with the ads, but also with the app. You will see with the green dot if the event is tracked. You will see with the red dot if the event is not tracked. And in this way, you have a clear idea of where you can intervene before to start campaigning. Because if you want to track registrations and you don't have an event in the MMP, you cannot measure the success of your campaign. Here, as I was mentioning, you can see an example of a bad ad. You see that there is too much text. You see that there is no font. You see that there is even more text in the banner. The text is cut on top and at the bottom. So you don't have a clear what's in it for me. This is an ad that you don't want to go live with. So always be careful. And probably if you really start with an audit, usually you do like this. Okay, let's wait to go live. Let's wait instead of burning some budget. Let's fix everything and then we will start. Once, of course, you have started implementing the changes that you want to change and you have fixed everything, there is the second phase, strategy and implementation. We put together the 2 phases because, of course, like once you have done the strategy, you can then implement it. And the questions, again, are around what is the target audience, what are the best channels, what message do you want to communicate, but also what is the best campaign setup and how do we measure success. Here, usually the activities are all related to first of all, fix the tracking and attribution if there are problems. And then, as I was mentioning, you have budget allocation, channel decisions, audience, lookalike, these kind of things that you want to start from, and then you implement it. In terms of creative, you can have some branding workshop, for example. You want to decide how to position yourself before to start. You want to be clear in what you want to communicate. And again, if there is some need of optimizing cross-area activities, that's the time where you propose some changes, for example, to the App Store pages and whatsoever. In this phase, we want to put the highlight on the naming structure. It is very important, I was mentioning before, when you create your campaign, to think big, because the name of a campaign that you choose at the beginning will stay forever. If you change it, the MMP will get crazy and you will not be able to measure the results. That's why we always suggest to have a precise naming for channel, for country, for each device, so that when you download the data, when you pull the data from Adjust or AppsFly or whatever MMP you're using, you can put it in whatever visualization tool and you can do your analysis. Another thing that we want to show some example of what we do in terms of cross activity. This was a client of ours. They wanted dating app. They wanted to run campaigns for registration. That was the objective. And the one on the left it was the registration page that they had at the beginning. And we said, guys, if you want to get registrations, you should improve your registration page, because this page, the first one on the left, is not really user-friendly. There are not so many options. There is not a clear value proposition, and there are not, it's not easy to register. So that's what we suggested as well. Once the implementation of the campaign is done, we start analyzing. And of course, again, here the questions are around the results. What is driving the results? What is the creative performance, and what are the things that we can do to improve? Here is the phase where we start getting a bit crazy, because you get really a lot of data. You can analyze everything. Some of you will tell me, we don't have data anymore with iOS 14. I will tell you that's not true, because we have data, we just have different data. We need to interpret the data a bit more. We need to be a bit more patient. We probably need more modeling, but the things that you can analyze are many. And it's important to do so. It's important to not only check the CPAs, the CPIs, the main KPIs that measure your success. It's important to check the trends. It's important to have a clear view. When there are some problems, you can see if the conversion rate is dropping, if some organic uplift is happening whatsoever. So again, measure as many things as possible, because as our friend at REPLUG, Ekin, is saying, in marketing as in life, there is never enough data. This is something that we wanted to show in relation to creative optimization. It's a matrix that we have created. It's very simple. It's to find the best concept in terms of banners. You see that there are two variables. One is the main element of the banner, which is a man, a woman, or a phone. And on the vertical axis, you see the banner text, which are 3. In this way, you have 9 different banners that have the same background, the same button and call to action, but they have different text and different elements in the banner, so that you can define what is your best performing concept. Here, as you might have understood, the optimization loop has started, so we can start improving our banners. We can start improving everything that is in the column number 5. This is the funniest part, the best part, at least for me, because we get the chance to really test a lot of things. For example, CPPs, I was mentioning. Here is a test that we did still with the dating app. We were running an influencer campaign on Facebook with the girl that you see on the left, and we put the same girl on the App Store page. And of course, you give continuity to this experience, and we could really get very good results. We did the same with the same concept that I showed you before, using the same character on the banner and also on the store page. But let's not limit ourselves to a custom product page. We can run, for example, in-app events that can increase the reach of the store. Of course, we can, of course, go beyond marketing. And here it's the last example that I have, and then I'm done. But it's very important to check also the onboarding. This is a case with of our clients. They had it's missed up. It's for a missed call notification. Their objective was to get users to start the trial. The one that you see now was the onboarding that they had when we started. It was not very user-friendly in terms of conversion. We proposed to change the onboarding in order to make it easier for the users to understand the value proposition of the app, but also to register faster. And with the new onboarding, we had a start trial rate increased by 37%. So again, the onboarding is not directly related to paid UA, but can have a really big impact on your activities. And that's why we really suggest to go beyond paid UA when you want to scale. Almost done. We always close with some conclusions and takeaways, some do's and some don'ts. In terms of do's, we really suggest you to be sure that the tracking is perfectly set up. But for real, you really need to be sure that the MMP is well set up, that the scan is well set up, so that you are able to track everything. Second suggestion: think holistic. Paid UA, ASO, UX, everything is connected. Everything can play an important role. And third suggestion: improve the onboarding. We saw the last example, can be crucial. And what we always say for everything at REPLUG, it's sleep, test, and repeat. You cannot get tired of testing new things. In terms of don'ts, the first suggestion: don't put all your eggs in the same basket. You need to diversify your channel strategy, because right now it's very difficult to scale a channel efficiently. So you might want to test some different strategies. I put a link here to an article from Petit about 20 additional ways to promote your app. Try them, because you can really find the sweet spot. Second suggestion: don't say I don't need this or I don't need that. And I mean, like, I don't need custom product page, for example. You need it. Like in 2023, to grow efficiently, you need everything in place. You need everything to be perfect, because otherwise you will lose some money. Third suggestion is: don't stop refreshing your knowledge. You need to keep on learning. You see, this is an industry that is changing. Now, for example, Scan 4.0 will be released soon. I mean, it's been released, but we need to change again the way we measure, the way we operate. And last but not least, don't be scared to try, because it looks complicated. It looks like there are many things to do, but at the end of the day, it's just about the process. And that was it. If you want to get to know more about the framework that you have just seen, you can scan the QR code. You will be redirected to one article, and there are more information. Thank you very much. And I think I was a bit longer than I was supposed to be, but I'm done.
That was awesome. Thank you, Lorenzo, for your educative deck. I would admit that your presentation has both the stunning slide design and informative content, because I guess your nation gave us Ferrari. So you elaborated on internal app aspects like UI, UX things, as well as about external things like organic installs, etc. That's awesome. So, dear attendees, our webinar we should address all the questions at the end. So you are welcome to drop your questions to the chat. We will answer them at the end of the webinar, but I see that Brian already addressed one question. That's fine. That's okay. So let's move ahead. We continue to our next presenter. let's hear it for Thomas Petit. Thomas, how's the evening going?
Yeah, all good. Very pumped to be here. Bit of pressure to go after Lorenzo and his very dense presentation. I guess some people will need to like take a breath and unpack because that was a lot of information.
Yeah,
Good job, Lorenzo. Also, good job, Ryan. I enjoyed
awesome.
the
Awesome,
side
Thomas,
quote.
stage is yours.
Fantastic. So, hi everybody. I've got a bit of a broader content today. As last month was January, there was a lot of predictions article, no crystal ball, what's going to happen, and I wanted to reflect a little bit on what we learned before predicting the future, which is quite uncertain. What we learned in the last year and a half, especially with the iOS change, and highlight a few trends. So I'm not going to dive into all of them, but I've selected a few that I think were worth highlighting. I'm going to skip the intro, and anyone who doesn't really know me can either research me or ping me in DM. Yeah, so I've picked a few trends I wanted to highlight. First, about things happening in the App Store. Obviously, ad measurement, because that was the big change in the last couple of years. How it impacted different channels and network, positively or negatively, and try to be a little bit less strategic and high level, and saying where to focus. I still have a slide about prediction, but that's not going to be the dense part today. And the first one, I've been in mobile for, I don't know, about 10 years now or something. No, from soon after the beginning of the App Store. This is the very first time we saw that from a year to another, the downloads were not growing anymore. Never seen before. And so they were like, have we reached the peak App Store? Is this like the end of super growth and so on? I don't think it's the end, but I just thought it was a very relevant thing to highlight because it didn't happen before. And one thing that is not completely clear yet is this structural because the App Store are getting more mature, or is this conjectural because of external factors? And there are a few factors that explain this. Worsening macroeconomics. Some companies have just less budget to invest, especially those that were growth at all costs, investing like crazily without return, especially in the gig economy company. So we've washed a few of them out of the auction, but the price have not gone down weirdly. Less VC investment, so obviously that affects the store. Another one is obviously the ad tracking transparency and how big of an effect this was on the fact that downloads have stalled a little bit. Eric Sarford called it the ATT recession, which is kind of an interesting way to put it. And it's got a really interesting take on that. I do think it was a factor for sure. And the last one, a bit of a reversion to the norm. The graph I put on the side here is actually the one for e-commerce, where you can see it was pretty linear, and when COVID happened, it made a huge spike, and it stalled a bit, but just is getting back on its normal line. How much of this are we seeing? It's true they also affected positively a lot of mobile companies, if not all. So what's really hard is to untangle these three factors. I believe that all three play some kind of role to end on this. The thing is, I don't think it's the end. I don't think it's going to start forever, but there are also sub-trends that are worth noticing. And for me, one of the big ones, obviously highlight this one because it's convenient for me as I work mostly in non-gaming, is that historically the App Store were mostly gaming revenue, around 70%, 75%. And slowly over the last 4 or 5 years, non-gaming have caught up. And when I say non-game, it's mostly subscription because most of the measured revenue there is subscription. And Apani says 96%, I think, or something. And you can see here on this graph from Sensor Tower, like how this stalling has really affected gaming a lot more than while subscription were keeping growing. So you have to go also to your verticals, like that the store is not growing as much as before. Doesn't mean it's true for everybody. I think there's lots of sub-trend, but this increasing share of subscription versus gaming IAB is definitely one of the trends. Like we've crossed the 50% line, which was not clear that it was going to happen so fast. Yeah, interesting one. And moving from the store to what's affecting marketers, obviously, like the change in measurement. So here's one thing. I tell all my teams, we don't say tracking. We're not tracking user. We're just measuring campaigns, because this is tracking is what we were doing before. What we're doing now is measuring the impact. I personally don't care that it's this individual or that is actually reacting to my campaign. I care that my campaign are efficient. And obviously measurement is now done differently because we can't track the same way as we were doing before. It doesn't mean you can't measure. And this is a bit of a shortened version of a more complex deck that I have on change in measurement. But basically the big points is that it's definitely more complex than it used to be, because we've got various sources of information to contrast, and they're not easy to compare, and it's a lot more uncertain. Like there's less certainty about everything you're doing. The decision are a bit more fuzzy. I end up saying for the better, because I think this environment is not as clear, is better in many ways. Like it's not easier for sure, but it's better in many ways, because the last touch attribution model relying on IDFA was, I think, not perfect either. It's just that it was easy and nice, so we all used it. But now we have to think a lot more. There are blurry situations where there's a bit more of an art of the instinct of what is actually working. They also push us to look like beyond paid and organics, beyond the IDFA, look more at incrementality and so on. So it's definitely harder, but I think in the long term, it makes marketing more interesting in a way. And it certainly is a challenge on every day, but it's also a chance for the smarter marketers to show up their skill. So not all bad, it's just a lot more headaches. Yeah, and this change in measurement, they had consequences on where we allocate budget and on how channels are working, which is obviously very app dependent. Like for some, Facebook will still be great, and for some, Apple search ads won't work or whatever. But if you look at it from a macro perspective, some of the winners of this change has been obviously Apple itself, because its own network is not affected by ATT. I'm preparing a talk where I'll say the opposite, where I'll say actually that a lot of the talks that Apple have benefited from ATT are not completely true, but they still benefited in a way. I would say TikTok is partly they're not a winner of the change of ATT, but one, they kept growing in the meantime. And at least at the beginning of the release, I have the feeling and some evidence that they adjusted to a SCAN network faster than other network. Like they really struggle less. Google has not adapted. Facebook took a while. Snap, I'm not too sure. They are finally adapting now, but TikTok was really fast on adapting the new network. And I think that really helped them gain market share in the meantime. And then two others that benefited because they're also not affected the same way are influencer marketing, because the track link was never the full story anyway. So you do have to look beyond the last touch. And web, with a lot of, especially in the subscription space, where a lot of marketers have diversified their acquisition by building web to app schemes and web onboarding before they bring to the whole product and so on. So those would be like winner, which is basically where people are investing more effort and more money. On the other side, you've got loser, which is mostly Facebook, mostly Meta. The estimates for last year lost just from ATT for Meta are around 10 billions. There are not a lot of other losers. I think the other paid social, Pinterest stopped doing app installs. I believe Twitter, which was not very big, and Snap also lost some market share, a little bit like Facebook. And much harder to do remarketing. It's not that remarketing is dead, but because the reach is much lower by having only consent cohort, it's obviously not such a lever as before, which makes that you have to look for alternative, and they are. But it's definitely one of the losers. I put Google and the networks in the middle with a logo of a roller coaster, because there's a bit of both. I think Google has gained in some ways with people moving budget to Android or having search that is not affected. They also lost in some ways because they didn't want to put ATT in YouTube. Obviously, that inventory has not been as great as it used to be, because they haven't adapted to a SCAN network yet, which is 2 years after launch, and so far nothing is available, which I think is disturbing for a company of 100 billion revenue. And ad networks are put in the middle because some of them have won and others have lost. I think the fact that none of them are respecting the guidelines and the policies are helping them in a way temporarily. And some of them have won big market share. And for a few clients, we went from having a very small share to respectable shares. But some of them also have suffered in the meantime. I'm not sure exactly why. So winners and losers in that category. Yeah, this is for channels. But all of those are pretty macro. So I'll try to get it like, what can we do as individuals? I think the first one is mindset shift. Like kind of we have to fire on all cylinder and be very concentrated and like follow what's happening, but really put our A game on first, like where it's harder than before. For what's pure acquisition, I think it's key to concentrate budget. Much harder to operate at smaller scale, but much harder to split around. And as a platform, they're already on this trend before ATT, but it's even more. Like there's much less campaign management. Very often, the much you would touch, the much you would edit, the worse it gets. Your work is basically elsewhere. It's not that as a marketer, like this has gone. It's just your effort should be elsewhere. ASO is not about organic. I think it's very intertwined with paid. And as an ASO manager, like you are part of the UA team, and the UA team is part of your team. Like this is the only way to go with it. There's no such thing as a separation between paid and organic. I guess as you do less campaign management, there's a lot more data analysis required to understand how your cohort are affecting your overall traffic, to interpret the scan data, to look at multiple sources, to build media mix models. So there's a lot of number crunching to do because of the uncertainty and the complexity. And obviously creatives that I think Lorenzo has highlighted is really the lever where you can not only improve UA efficiency, but also improve communication and how people perceive you in the long term. So definitely a level where the effort should be put. And it's not, and I think Lorenzo was also really good on this. Like improving your growth is not just about paid UA. It's a lot more intertwined with other topics. If you're just putting money into the ad machines, even if you're doing it great, it's not gonna end up winning if you don't follow the other topics that you have to. And I think it put a lot on stress on onboarding, and that's very right, because most of us still have a very leaky onboarding. In my experience, where all the low-hanging fruits lie is where you can really make the biggest change, because there's still more user and it's at the beginning of the funnel. So definitely a lot of stress on onboarding in improvement to lose less users. A big one is monetization, and I think over the past 2 years, the amount of people who are iterating on the paywall and thinking about different models, going hybrid, analyzing where they could upsell and so on has grown in importance massively. A lot of people have there are only a few people who are really good at that, and the demand is massive. I'm seeing a lot of company putting on that, and I'm happy that we've got Alice just after, who's going to detail a little bit what you can do there and some specifics. I think our team has a lot of experience with that. It's going to be an interesting one to follow. And besides product, like Lorenzo also mentioned this, but as remarketing has suffered some loss, obviously more effort and more resources bring to lifecycle and CRM. What you can do with email, with push, but especially with in-app messages, where it gives marketer a lot of flexibility to show different, I call them campaigns, but like different activities within the app without having to release and edit in product. If you're not doing this activity, definitely one for the future. And I do have a last slide about what's next. So what's next for this year? I think before we kind of predict what's next, for most of us, or probably for all of us, what's next is what is already there, because none of us is doing what Ryan said perfectly. None of us is doing all of what Lorenzo explained perfectly. And none of us is at 100% on the few things that I've just mentioned. So I think what's next is getting our priority right and trying to improve where we're already failing in fields that exist, that are not next gen, that are not AI, but stuff that we should have done in the past and we haven't yet. So for me, what's next is starting there, but we're lacking. And yeah, things for this year, SCAD Network 4.0. There's a lot of hope on this. Apple released it in October. I don't know a single network that has it deployed at scale. Not one. We're 4 months later. I think that's worrying. And I believe personally that the transition period from now to the end of the year is going to be quite painful, because some network are going to be with 4, other with 3. Not all devices are updated, because we have to figure it out. What are the best schema coming? I'm following the topic very closely. It's really interesting to read what people are thinking about it, because it's a lot more complex than before. It gives a lot of new options, but they're not so simple. Careful yet that I'm saying that there's a lot of talking and very little working, in the sense that nobody really knows how it's going to go in practice. Everything we have about Scan4 today is theoretical. It's going to be an exciting field of experimentation for the next 6 months, but it's also going to be a minefield, I believe. So let's see. More top-down measurement, basically relying less on the IDFA and inferring more what the results are without having to use consensus, which is a complement to how we're doing it, not a replacement. And I put AI there. I think there's a lot of hype, so I had to mention it. I don't think AI is going to change massively how we operate this year, but it's true that it's already, it's interesting to play with. It's already actionable for some limited areas, but as the techniques advance and we move from text to image and soon to animation and then videos, obviously in the mid-long term, it will play definitely a role, not only in marketing, but also in the content we produce in app. I just don't think that's going to happen this year. So this year is a year to toy around with it, but don't stress out. It's not going to change everything. Yeah, so a little bit of a crystal ball. And to go back on practice, I mentioned one of the field to focus on was improving monetization, because it gives you more leverage in acquisition. If you monetize better, you can bid higher, making your rep happy and making your life easier. So we're going to transition on how you can monetize a little bit better. Feel free to contact me elsewhere. I'm happy to address questions as well at the end of the webinar, but feel free to join me as well if you have further questions. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thomas, a shout out for your research. Very
retention, not monetization. But I'm sure she's going to talk about both, so keep posted anyway.
nice. Yeah. So that was I should say that was really insightful, especially the part about channel trends. TikTokers are inviting the word, aren't they? So.
See, there was an article this morning that some senator want to ban them again. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's a nice circus to watch over there.
Exactly, agreed. So talking to our auditor, don't forget, guys, to write your questions in the chat. If you want Thomas to answer your questions at the end of the webinar, please point out at it. And we have to move forward. We have to move forward to our next speaker. Alice, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. So Alice will tell us today about user retention. Alice, please share with us what you have for today after this short self-introduction.
Sure, thank you. And thanks to all the previous speakers. That was really lots of interesting insights there. Hi, everyone. I'm one of the senior growth consultants on the retention team at Phiture. Phiture is a mobile growth consultancy based in Berlin. And over the last 4 years, I've worked with a number of apps across different service verticals, helping apps to increase their retention and monetization rates. I think we can move on. So I'm going to be talking to you all today about subscription optimization and some of the things that you can do to boost subscriptions in 2023. I'll start with some observations about the subscription economy and the general landscape and some predictions for 2023. And then I'm going to move on to some actionable recommendations to approach subscription optimization in a strategic way. So let's get started. First off, we're obviously in the midst of a recession, as I'm sure everyone's aware, and in some places a cost of living crisis as well. And this means that naturally users will be really skeptical about which apps and products they commit to, and people are generally kind of keeping an extra eye on like their bank accounts to understand what's coming out every month. On top of that, a report from Adaptee that was published in Q4 last year also suggested that, according to their own data, the average iOS subscription price has grown by 36.5% between January 2021 and January 2022, and the annual subscription price has increased by 33%, while the monthly one has increased even more by 40%. So this means that we've got this perfect storm of the recession looming, but obviously prices have increased as well. And also what that means is that getting users to convert to paid might be a harder sell than in previous years. It's not all doom and gloom, however. Here's a report from Data AI's State of the Mobile 2023 paper, which suggests that consumer spending on non-gaming apps actually continued to grow in 2022. So let's discuss some of the things you can do to capitalize on this trend and continue to optimize your revenue. Subscription businesses should always be striving to provide value to the user, whether we're in the midst of a recession or not. And this is just like the basics of having a subscription business. We should always be thinking, you know, as users are paying for this on a recurring basis, are we making sure to add value to their lives and making sure that the product is a part of their everyday lifestyle. When we think about why people start to disengage with products, there are usually a few reasons that come to mind. This could be, for example, boredom with the content. For example, if a music or video streaming service stops producing content or has a slowdown in content, or the users might have used the product so much that they experience burnout, which is something that can be quite common, for example, in the gaming industry. Or another reason could be that the user has had a change of lifestyle or habits and the product no longer solves their problem. Or a competitor might be winning their attention. So in order to tackle this, you need to really understand why users might be disengaging, and a combination of market intelligence and user insights is needed to inform solid hypotheses around this and to create a strategy which tackles churn moving forward. This example that I have on the right here is from Headspace. Headspace were a client of ours, and I really like this example of what they did. So Headspace knew that they needed to try to retain users, and they knew that once users had, you know, kind of gone through the basics meditation pack, they'd learned, you know, how to meditate, and they'd been listening to the different courses and on Headspace. I think the Headspace team had basically wanted to try to find another way that once someone understands what they're doing, they don't necessarily need the app, they would still come to Headspace because Headspace still provides value to their lives. So one thing that it did was they created this new feature called Move Mode, and Move Mode basically brought mindfulness to exercise. So I really like this example because it's, you know, it's a similar value proposition, but it's finding ways to extend the value proposition so users can use what they've learned in another part of their lifestyle, which is obviously exercise. Continuing to find new ways to add value to users, whether it's in big ways or small, is crucial to retaining them in the long term. Good segmentation is also really important because it highlights gaps in your subscription optimization strategy. Here is my subscription lifecycle framework. I posted this on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago, and this basically outlines the different stages of the subscription lifecycle to give you an idea of what you should be aiming to achieve at each stage. So you'd be surprised at the number of apps that I work with where they might be doing a lot of work on, for example, churn prevention, or they might be, you know, they might have a really interesting kind of friction point to get people to upsell and be doing a lot of stuff with paywall optimization, but they're not really focused on, for example, onboarding premium users. When you lay out the various stages and map your initiatives against each stage, this can be really helpful in pointing out those areas that you need to work on or highlight potential reasons why users are not sticking around. For example, your goal at the potential subscriber stage is really to onboard, activate, and educate users about your core value proposition so that they see the value in becoming a paid subscriber and ultimately move into that subscribed and engaged bucket. I cannot stress the importance as well, once you have someone that's moved into the subscribed and engaged bucket, of properly onboarding those users, even if they've been onboarded with the free experience. I still think it's really important to make sure that you set aside another onboarding journey for people that have become premium, so that they understand how to get the most out of the premium value and where to find the features that they're actually paying for. The goal with disengaging users is really to understand why they are no longer valuing your product in the way that they used to, and to find strategies to win back your users' attention, and keep the product part of their lives, similar to the Headspace example that I mentioned above. And then with churn, your goal really is to once you've done that research in the disengaged bucket, hopefully you would be able to also win back some of the users that have already churned, by reconnecting with them to sort of reinforce the value proposition. And sometimes things like win back discounts can work really well there. Another thing that you can do is expand on your value offering. Another thing that you can do to expand your value offering is to analyze what we call adjacent users. So adjacent users are users who are aware of the subscription advantages, but they're not able to convert for whatever reason. They might be on a lower income, for example, or simply have less of a need for the premium features. And in other words, adjacent users are users who need your app and like it, but for some reason, they just haven't figured out how to make the most of it and subscribe. A first step to really understanding these users is to run cohort analysis and see how their behavior and preferences differs to users who have subscribed. And once you've gained valuable insights into the needs of those particular adjacent users, you can strategize around making the premium product more valuable for them. And sometimes this could look like adding extra features as part of your premium offering, subscription offering. And sometimes you can do other things to monetize those adjacent users, like, for example, having an advertising model and have like a hybrid monetization model. So subscribed users subscribe, but then those that might not be able to, for whatever reason, subscribe, you're also making money out of that traffic as well. Another thing that you should be thinking about is optimizing your paywall placement to maximize your conversion potential. So a few people have been talking about this in the industry recently, and I remember, I think it was Jake Moore from Superwall recently was saying that one of the best metrics for you to track is your download to paywall view metric. And you'd be surprised at the amount of companies that have their paywall buried deep into the product. You've got to remember that if users don't see your paywall, they're 100% not going to subscribe, because they don't have the ability to do that. So in this chart here, I've got some examples of placements that you might want to test. The big obvious one is onboarding. If you can get your paywall to as close to the beginning of the onboarding as possible, that means that you're kind of ensuring almost, or as near to 100% visibility. But also there are other flows that you can use to sort of personalize the paywall experience. So for example, a happy moment in the user lifecycle is when somebody has completed an action and they really understand the value proposition of the product, and they're starting to adapt a habit around it. So this could be, for example, if we go back to Headspace, this could be somebody that has completed the basics meditation pack and really understands what they're doing, how to meditate, and how Headspace fits in their life. This can be a good moment to trigger a paywall, because you're catching, for obvious reasons, you're catching users when they're happy, and you're sort of saying to them, I understand that you're using this product, but here's how you could get even more out of it by going premium. A friction point is this is a funny one. We talk about this a lot in our team. And I think I actually saw a great case study yesterday from Growth Design, where they looked at Strava and the friction points that Strava had between the free user experience and the paid user experience. Friction points are basically a point that you would trigger a paywall where the user has basically gotten a lot out of the free experience, and they're maybe like about to complete an action or about to sort of really get to the value proposition, but they need to pay in order to do that. So great example is with Adobe Express. Adobe Express is obviously like an online creative editing tool, and you can edit on Adobe Express for free, but if you want to actually download and save your projects, you have to upsell, you have to convert to paid. So that's what I would describe as a friction point. Then there's indirect intent. Indirect intent is when your user behavior kind of follows the same patterns as people who eventually subscribe. So this is something that you would be able to kind of look at with an analyst. How do we cohort users that replicate the behavior of subscribers, and then make sure that we're targeting those users at the right moments to try and get them up to upsell. And then direct intent, this is when people actually click on the premium features, but then they might drop off for whatever reason. They might abandon the cart, or they might just not be in a place where, you know, they have like the ability to subscribe at that moment. So you would be looking to sort of retarget users that have shown direct intent. Another thing that's been talked about a lot in the industry right now is reverse trials. I think the first person to kind of really make this known was a product-led growth expert called Elena Berna. She's currently the interim head of growth at Amplitudes, and she has talked a lot about reverse trials and how they can be a great tactic to basically give users the chance to experience the core value of premium, but without, you know, without that extra commitment at the beginning. So with a reverse trial, you basically download or start using the product, and automatically you have access to those premium features without subscribing, without adding credit card details, this type of thing. And then after a certain amount of time, say for example 14 days, those premium features get rolled back. And if you want to so you would kind of downgrade into like a freemium experience, and then if you wanted to continue using the premium, that's when you would actually action the subscription, or you know, pay with your credit card or something like that. And another thing with regards to trials, this is some data that's come from RevenueCat. RevenueCat ran an analysis of over 10,000 subscription apps, and they discovered that longer free trials actually outperform the shorter free trials. And I thought this was really interesting because it's something I've talked a lot about with my clients, where we see that clients tend to pick these trials that are, for example, 3 days, 7 days, or 14 days, kind of standardized. And you see that sort of standardized in the industry. But I think what we have to remember, and this was also mentioned in RevenueCat's report, is that you've got to think about context. So if, for example, it takes, you know, if for example you have a product that your natural usage habit is monthly, and users are coming in and using your product once a month, they're probably going to have to use that product for about maybe 2-3 months before they really form a habit around it. And therefore a 3-day trial is probably not going to be sufficient in order to encourage users to adopt that habit. So that's why I would say test different trial lengths. As we've seen in the data, longer free trials do become more common, regardless of the fact that they take obviously a bit longer for you to kind of get that income in over the door, get those conversions over the door. I do think it's worth it as a long-term strategy, but also be thinking about the context, think about the type of your product, how often users are using it, and does this trial length actually make sense? So I think that's pretty much everything from my part. Just to wrap up and summarize. So basically, we know that consumer spending has increased over the last year on non-gaming apps. But one of the problems that we have at the moment is that we are obviously in the midst of a recession. And so going back to basics, we just need to make sure that when we are offering a subscription, that there's continuous value being provided, and that you're making sure that your product is part of your user's lifestyle and remains that way despite the increased competition. Segmentation is also key, so making sure that you really bucket users into the different segments of, for example, potential subscribers versus people that are subscribed and engaged versus people that might be kind of at risk of churning. And lastly, think deeper about trials. Don't just copy what everybody else is doing in the industry, but actually think about what makes sense for you and your product. Here, I've left you a copy, or a first look at the subscription stack. The subscription stack is a brand new framework from Phiture. It's been my baby for the last year. I've basically created this strategic framework for operating a subscription business, and it covers everything from acquisition to conversion rate optimization to churn prevention, tools and infrastructure, and metrics that you should be tracking. And we do have, if you scan that QR code at the bottom, we have the stack with an intro article, and then we're going to have a series of articles that dives into each of these topics in greater detail. I think that's everything for me. Thank you very much. And I'll pass back over to the Asodesk team.
Hey, Alice, big thanks for sharing your knowledge. That was awesome. I would say the takeaways were really mesmerizing. So I see the couple of questions in the chat. Attendees, we see all your questions. Our experts will address your questions in 5-7 minutes. We are almost there. So let's move ahead to next part of our webinar. And as you already guessed, it's special offer time. Yep. If you are looking now, for example, for a tool that we could offer you, one thing which is really rare, because it's available only for webinar attendees. And the thing is that our ultimate plan is usually available only for 1 year as a subscription and costs around $3,000. And it includes the full feature set ever available within the Asodesk, including 15 apps to be tracked, on top-notch comparative report, which allows you to understand everything about your competition in your category, organic report to see organic data in very detailed breakdown, and a lot more, including premium support. So long story short, it's definitely worth to try it out. With this ultimate plan, you'll be able to incorporate all the strategies we've discussed today with our speakers. So now the button will appear here. Click on it and you'll be redirected to the pricing page. In the promo tab, you'll find this option to subscribe to. So again, this is one-time offer, which is valid only until the February 10th, just 1 week left. So link will be in the description for those who watch us on the record. Yeah, we can see this get plan button, so you can click and get directly to the pricing page. As well as one small announcement from me again. If you need more information about the Asodesk, about how to incorporate with the strategies which have been said today, so you'll be able to explore this further together with me. Any questions regarding to our offer, trials, etc., feel free to book a short 30-minute call with me. Together we will elaborate a plan of your application for the growth and put everything into the practice. So button for the booking the page will appear here. Otherwise, you can scan this code right from your screen to schedule a call. If no one objected, let's move ahead. So we're almost there. Yep, here is the thing about our YouTube channel. You'll be able to find the record of this webinar as well as watch some learning videos about ASO, previous webinars. So there are a lot of useful stuff, so feel free to join. Again, you can scan this code, even if you did not have a chance to do it now, you'll find it in the recording later. And yep, here we are. That's what we was waiting. The wait is over. Thanks again for all the speakers for this insightful hour. I hope everybody enjoyed. So it's time to answer the questions. Let me find some interesting questions in the chat to be answered. Yep. So the first question I see here was addressed to Ryan Kelley, and I see that Ryan already answered, but Ryan, I will ask you to say it again out loud because there should be a recording of this call, and we want people who should watch the recording to understand what's going on, what was the question, what was the answer. So let's go over it again one more time. So the question was from Kelley. And it was, how do you assess the impact of ASO in 2023? Don't you think that every year the influence of ASO is weakening while other channels for attracting new users are increasing their influence?
Well, I do think that ASO it's a mid-funnel strategy. It happens in the mid. So are you saying, is the app page exposed to more people because of ASO? Probably not. That's really more top of funnel where app discovery is happening, where you are bringing people to the app page. So I don't think that ASO is weakening. I just think that it's always going to be there because it's a mid funnel strategy, and the user journey has to pass through ASO in some ways. But it's definitely not the strategy that it was years ago, and it's definitely not the only strategy. It's just it works in combination with other strategies, as was said by other people. It's very much a part of paid UA. As far as measurement goes, like this comes down to using, what does your ASO tool look like? What does your ASO tech stack look like? And being able to understand keyword installs. So as in my reply, I was kind of saying, the first thing that I always do is I set benchmarks. I want to know like how many keyword installs did I get for the same keywords the previous year, or historic data, or previous quarter. And I also want to know, like, what are the industry benchmarks for conversion? I want to know what competitor benchmarks are, how many installs they get, what kind of share of voice do they get, lots of things like that. And then I collect all that information so I can say, on this date, I know that I made changes and I updated. So I expect to see expansion of keywords. If I've added in new keywords to the hidden keyword field, I expect to see keyword installs for keywords go up, for keywords that I've added or repositioned. And I expect there to be like more positive movements, which is an indication that ASO update or that keyword optimization update was successful.
That's great. Thanks a lot, Ryan. Thanks a lot for such a deep elaboration. Let's move ahead to the next question. We have a question from Julia Oleshko, who is asking, type in my question. Okay. What about including high volume keywords, which are parts of competitors' apps names, like purple sky in the, purple sky in the app name? Would add in purple sky keywords help? I think this question was addressed to Lorenzo, but Ryan, if you want to answer that, feel free to do it.
I think I gave a long-winded answer, so maybe
want...
I'll let Lorenzo answer this one.
Yeah, Lorenzo, if you can hear us and if you can see this question, please come up for the stage and feel free to answer this question. Yeah, here is Lorenzo. Yeah, I see that Lorenzo is reconnecting. I would read the question once again. What about including high volume keywords, which are parts of competitors' apps name? Like purple sky in the app name, would adding purple sky keywords help? Plus, this question has the second part, which is about how in-app events can help. Lorenzo, your microphone is muted.
Yeah, sorry, my Google Chrome crashed. What was the question related to in-app events, correct?
Yeah, that was, what about including high volume keywords which are parts of competitors' apps names? Like purple sky in the app name, would adding purple sky keywords help?
This one was for Ryan, I guess.
That was, yeah, perhaps for Ryan.
I handed it off to you.
But I know that definitely this question. Yep.
Sorry, I didn't follow this question really. I was like answering the one of the in-app events before.
Okay.
So
I let this
one.
Let's go for the in-app events, then we get back to competitors' apps names.
I mean, at the end of the day, as Thomas was mentioned, like we don't need to do new things. In-app events are something that can help increase the organic visibility, can help also if some paid user is landing on the story scene. In-app events can be something more. They can be useful to re-engage existing users that are not active anymore, and they go to the store and they see your in-app event. But also users that deleted your app, if you have some new feature. Like I'm thinking about all those apps, content apps like Blinkist. They have books. I saw last day a very nice event, in-app event related to the release of Prince Harry's book Spare. It's something that you go on the store and you see the in-app events, you can convert them to a paying user. So again, every little thing can really help create conversions and create engagements. That's my answer for in-app events. For the keywords in the title, I let Ryan answer. I think he can do a better job than I can.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Lorenzo. Ryan, if you have something to tell us about the app names,
I
please go
think
for it.
specifically like using app names, like this was a strategy to use the app names, if I'm answering the question correctly, in the hidden keyword field. This was a strategy that worked very well for years and years and years. But I think more and more it's working less. And that's because I think that Apple has a way of not giving as much credit. I said ghosting in the reply there, but they're probably not ghosting the keyword, but they are probably not giving much weight to it. So it's not a strategy that I use very much anymore, unless it's a maybe if it's a smaller app, I might do it every once in a while. But as far as if there is a combination of keywords or a keyword phrase that has high volume and you want to, and it's in a competitor's title, and you want to use that in your own title or subtitle, I think that's great. I think that's an excellent strategy. But if it's something that's branded, then yeah, I wouldn't necessarily, probably wouldn't be a good strategy. Only because another thing is people that are intent or have high intent on downloading a brand are probably looking for that brand. And yes, they may download your app because they might evaluate it, or it might catch their eye, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a good user for your app. And perhaps they might download multiple apps. So it's not something that I would go after. I'm really after the brand user, or the brand searcher who's searching for my brand, and then probably like a handful of high volume keywords that are very relevant to the app. That's really like, those are the users that I really want versus like competitors.
Yep, thanks a lot, Brian, for your answer. And we move ahead to the next question, the question for Thomas Petit. Thomas, are you here? Yeah, here you are. So let me say it out loud once again.
Sure.
Do you think the App Store market is becoming more and more competitive and may not be that lucrative? The question from David Eritian. I'm sorry if I mistaken with the surname.
Thanks, David. Thanks, David, for the question. So are the App Store getting more competitive and less lucrative? More competitive, yes. Less lucrative, not necessarily. I think like here, it's clear there is more competition because the App Store is a bit more mature. It doesn't mean the opportunities are gone. I answered it. For me, more competition is just not that there are more apps, which is a bit of a vanity metric. I don't care how many apps there are. Is that the apps that are there are better, they're more mature, they're bigger, they have more resource, and so on. We can also see that more niche are being covered. A few verticals, that's it, they've got their winners, like some categories have been won. For example, unless it's very specific, it has something very new, a twist, I wouldn't launch a language learning app or a dating app, a generalistic one, because there's an obvious winner, but there's still ways to find twists and so on. I think here, it doesn't mean like higher competition doesn't mean there's no opportunity. I know a few indies that are still doing very well in their space with their resources and their tactic, and they're living very well out of it. I think it's just there's a much bigger cake, so it attracted bigger sharks, but there's still pockets that are worth fighting. And so it's definitely not easier, but it doesn't mean there's no opportunity on the store. More competitive, but not less lucrative is my answer.
That's great. That's great. Thanks a lot, Thomas. I think David had his answer. And we have last question for today from Uzma Farouk. What is the most critical metric that shows if you are doing ASO correctly, and how long should one wait before doing another ASO update? So there is no specifically addressed question, so everybody feel free to answer it.
Yeah, I guess Ryan is the expert here, unless he doesn't want it. Let's go with the ASO expert.
The pressure.
Ryan. Yeah, again.
That's really.
All the questions are for you. You're the star.
It's really hard to answer. I always do a cadence of making sure that I work on visibility optimization for a period of 4 to 6 weeks, and then a major release, and then I work on conversion optimization for the next 4 to 6 weeks, so that I don't have a release where there's 2 like major releases in a close period of time, because it's very difficult to measure the impact and to really track it. As far as the updates go, I always like to make updates when there's not major campaigns or not other events that are going on outside the store, because again, it's very hard to measure what is really organic and what is not. I know it's a whole nother discussion about what is organic and not, but I always like to think of it as a 1 month sprint for ASO, and so I'll work on something for that sprint, whether it's new screenshots or testing screenshots, or whether it's completely changing screenshots, or whether it's restructuring the keywords and metadata, or changing the description, or oftentimes business goals change, and so a lot, or features or new features. So that's usually when I try and do updates. Otherwise, it's really one update per month at the end of the sprint. But the most critical metric that, there's not just one. It's actually, I like to say that we make small tweaks and we have small wins, but those small wins compound over time. And it just means that you become better and better optimized. And I think more than anything, you're looking to learn about what's working. So I think it's different metrics for different different activities. So keyword optimization and creative optimization have 2 different metrics to track, I guess.
Nice. Thanks a lot, Ryan. So I should say that that's pretty much it for our webinar for today. Thanks a lot for the speakers, for the insights. Thank you all for your attention. The session turned out to be very cozy and fulfilled. And thanks to the audience for staying until the end. Let's keep in touch. You'll receive, you all will receive the recording of the app onto your emails, and as well, you can feel free to find us on the YouTube. So stay tuned. Thanks a lot.